I'm Jim Rundle, Planning Manager with the City of Sparks. Thank you for tuning in today to review draft conceptual plans with me for the Victorian Square Plaza and the adjoining private parcels in proximity. We will ultimately take these plans forward to the Sparks Planning Commission, the Sparks Redevelopment Agency, and the Sparks City Council. We will be going through the next steps for amending what is the redevelopment plan. The process to do that will be 4 meetings to solicit stakeholder and public input. We will be holding 2 virtual meetings, October 27th through the 29th. We will be hosting 2 meetings in person at the Nugget. The purpose of the meetings are to present draft plans for the plaza and adjacent private parcels, known as the Promenade Project. We want to obtain public input and comments on these plans. The redevelopment amendment process will include public hearings with the Redevelopment Agency, the Sparks Planning Commission, and the Sparks City Council. There will be 2 parts to my presentation today. Property owners' development plans for the Promenade Project on the 4 parcels and a portion of the former alley located east and west of the plaza. And second, the city's draft plan for reconstruction of the plaza and the adjacent public right-of-way. Now we will take a look at the map depicting Victorian Square, including the plaza and the promenade parcels that we talked about earlier. There are 4 parcels and a portion of the former alley. The promenade parcels are located on the east and west side of the plaza, and they're highlighted on this map in red. The plaza parcel is highlighted in orange, and this is the area that we are going to go over the construction plans for the plaza. The Promenade Project includes 2 structures which are nearly identical: ground floor retail and commercial uses, and 4 decks of parking, 8 stories of housing, which is approximately 141 feet tall and is 13 stories. The Promenade Project will be approximately 336 residential units, 168 per building, 594 parking spaces, 24,000 square feet of retail space. And I want to identify, we have not chosen the exterior colors yet, or the developer has not, but they are included in this just for sake of elevation for consideration. This is the Promenade West Tower. You can see here the 13 stories that we just discussed, and that the vertical elevation does not extend across the entire footprint. You can see here that there are outdoor dining venues for the commercial that is on the first floor, and you can begin to see the right-of-way that has been left in front of the buildings as well. This is the Promenade East Tower, which is essentially a mirrored building to the West Tower. And again, the colors of the building are just preliminary at this point. But again, I want to point out the retail on the first floor, the outdoor space, and again, the vertical component does not extend across the entire footprint of the building. This is a view of the East Tower looking toward the Nugget, or looking from the north to the south. The next slide shows a view as if you were standing on Victorian Avenue looking to the north toward the current movie theater. And this cross section shows the building and where the parking area will be, and where the residential will be on the top floors. And again, the first floor is reserved for the commercial components. This slide reflects the ground floor of the West Tower, and you can see that the restaurant has been identified as the anchor tenant here and is approximately 3,500 square feet. The Sparks Comprehensive Plan has multiple goals that will be advanced by the redevelopment that we are discussing today, including Goal MG2. To foster diversity in the land use mix, including residential, commercial, industrial, employment, and recreational areas citywide. Goal MG4 is to facilitate infill and redevelopment. Goal MG5 is to prioritize development and enhancement of the downtown Sparks Center. Continuing on, Goal MG6 of the Sparks Comprehensive Plan promotes compact development to reduce the per capita cost of providing infrastructure, public facilities, and public services. Policy CC2 is to promote a mix of uses, including restaurants and shopping, to create a vibrant downtown district at Victorian Square. Further, on the Sparks Comprehensive comprehensive plan are housing goals. Those goals H2 are to promote a strong, diverse housing market that support economic growth and vitality while ensuring environmental and fiscal sustainability. Goal Housing 3, or H3, ensures that Sparks residential and mixed-use neighborhoods are desirable locations to live. And lastly, on the Sparks Comprehensive Plan is Policy C6. In Sparks' transit corridor, we should promote infill development and create a pedestrian-friendly environment that facilitates walkability and transit ridership. Now I'd like to move on to zoning. This area that we're discussing today is zoned mixed-use downtown Victorian Square. That zoning district encourages or permits a range of retail, employment, casinos, civic and entertainment uses. And on the residential side, it requires medium to high density housing, a minimum of 30 units per acre, but there is no maximum. The zoning requires an average minimum unit size of 500 square feet. The proposal for the unit size on this project is 770 square feet. There is no height limit in this zoning district. The zoning encourages retail and commercial uses concentrated at the street level, while the residential and office uses are generally concentrated above the retail and commercial uses. Now I'd like to discuss the redevelopment plan. We call it the Victorian Square Development Plan. The development program for Victorian Square calls for a mixed-use retail, office, and residential development. The parcels owned by Silverwing Development are designated for retail on the ground floor with office and residential uses above the ground floor. The downtown redevelopment plan will need to be amended to incorporate some of the concepts that are being discussed today. Those substantive proposed changes include permitting greater intensity and high-rise residential buildings, and to allow office uses on the ground floor in addition to being above retail. The redevelopment plan will need to be modified to allow for the plaza and adjacent north-south streets. We will need to update the plan to reflect changed circumstances and implementation strategies, and generally bring it into greater conformance with the comprehensive plan and better align it with the current zoning. And that concludes my presentation on the development of the private parcels. Now I would like to discuss what Sparks will be proposing for the plaza. We see our town square, or Victorian Plaza, as a gathering place for both organized and informal activities. Jay Witt, the developer on the projects next door to the plaza, has identified that this area will be used by many residents and citizens. This area needs the ability to host multiple roles: outdoor dining, outdoor entertainment, and most importantly to the citizens of Sparks, our special events. And the key component to our Sparks citizens and our residents of the area are hosting those special events that Sparks is so renowned for. With the development of this Victorian Square area, we want to make sure we maintain the visibility to the cinema. We want to maintain vehicular access to drive-through so that people can see what the area has and have access to stores, restaurants, and again, access to the cinema. Parking and access is very important. We need to provide on-street parking. We need to maintain mid-block pedestrian crosswalks, and we want to anticipate changing preferences in mobility. Small space and serving various purposes are some of the objectives of this downtown area. Some of these, unfortunately, are competing interests. Do we want parking, or do we want wider sidewalks? Do we want outdoor dining, or do we want more area for special events? This is a very difficult balance. Here is the site. This site, again, has the area of study, which we identify as the plaza. You can see the movie theater to the north, and the two private parcels that we discussed earlier on the east and west of the plaza. You can see here that we would intend to change the alignment of Avenue of the Oaks to being straight, as opposed to going around what is currently the water fountain. We propose removing the water fountain. Another thing I want to talk about is in the summertime, how hot it can get downtown, and that there's very little shade. We need to address those issues. This is a dimensioned site plan of the area we're discussing downtown. You can see the plaza is approximately 330 feet from north to south and 78 feet wide. You can see on this site plan where parking would go, how wide the drive aisles would be, how wide the sidewalks would be. Now, some of this is required by fire code, and so we have to find the balance between fire code pedestrian accessibility, and again, moving cars through the area so they can see what is downtown. This slide reflects that the plaza width will remain the same, but the sidewalks do widen in our proposal. We are doing this by removing the angled parking and changing it to parallel parking. The west side of the plaza would change and be a two-way street, whereas the east side would be changed to be a flexible one-way street. It could be open for vehicular traffic, but it could be temporarily closed, potentially accommodating for special events. Here we can see that before, or currently, we have 28 parking spaces. With the proposed changes, we would still have 26. The parking strategy is currently a dual roadway, one direction on one side of the plaza and the other direction on the other side of the plaza, whereas the proposal has the west side with parallel two-way road and the east side is a pedestrian street. The sidewalk width is currently 9 feet and we are proposing to go to 14 feet. The plaza length remains the same at 330 feet, but the width is increased from 78 feet to 86 feet. Now I want to discuss how the plaza will be set up. We will be using the concept of city to the south, a community more so in the middle, and locals on the north side. This balances the objectives that we discussed earlier. The area closer to Victorian Avenue is oriented for the events with a stage. The middle part, again, community oriented. People who live down there or even from the region may be happy with the more private use of that area. And the fountain area to the north would be less active. Anybody can be here, but likely it'll be residents residing in the area utilizing this space. Now I'm going to talk about some of the components in the plaza. The first one I'd like to speak about is the dog park. This is a small space, but there are a lot of residents living downtown that have pets, and there are more to come. So this is a very important component. Now don't get hung up on some of the proposals for this dog park, including the real grass versus artificial turf. We have not identified what is the appropriate material, but give us your opinions. Do we want to water this area? Do we not want to water this area? Please let me know your thoughts. It will likely be 2 years before these improvements are constructed, as we expect the eastern building to be constructed first, the one we discussed earlier in the promenade on the private parcel. And then we will begin to construct the improvements on the plaza. The next component I'd like to talk about is the area we are identifying as a tree bosque area. Now this would be the area that we have trees that add natural shade, an area that you would go down, there would be tables and chairs that you could utilize and sit under the trees. It is again a small space, 30 by 30, but it allows the people that live down there to go down, be outside, and be shaded if it were the summertime. This view is as if you were standing in the plaza looking to the north next to the clock. In the foreground you can see the playground area. This perspective is standing on the west side of the plaza, looking to the east. Another perspective, standing next to the fountain, on the west side of the fountain, looking south. This perspective is looking as if you were sitting in the tree bosque area, looking to the south. We have also had a shadow study completed for the area, considering the eastern and western parcels being developed with 13-story buildings as we discussed earlier. First we'll start with a study from what would be on the summer solstice in June. At 9 a.m. you would see there would be some shadowing on the plaza from the eastern building. At noon the southern sun would be not casting any shadows on the plaza, and then at 3 in the afternoon the western 13-story building would begin to encroach with some shadowing onto the plaza. The next slide is a winter shadow study. This would be in December on the solstice. At 9 a.m. there would be casting of shadowing onto the plaza. However, at noon there would not be any casting of shadow from the two buildings, and at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, the western building would begin to cast shadow on the plaza. Lastly, the shadow study was conducted for the fall and spring equinox. In the morning, the eastern building would cast some shadowing onto the plaza. However, at noon, there would not be any casting of shadow, and again, at 3 in the afternoon, the western building begins to cast shadows onto the plaza. This is the materials palette that the city has proposed for consideration by the citizens. This is the color palette. We wanted to use local materials and those that are readily available, so as we move forward, we will be able to obtain them. You can see that we've identified a color palette of some blues and grays and darker grays for the area. That concludes our formal presentation with a slideshow for the improvements we're considering for the Victorian Square Plaza and the parcels next to the plaza. Please provide us your comment. And if you aren't able to provide us your comment, you're welcome to come to the Sparks Planning Commission and speak during public comment or the redevelopment agency meeting. And finally, the Sparks City Council meeting will be a third opportunity to provide any comment that you have for us to consider or the elected officials to consider as we move forward with developing the plaza in Victorian Square. Thank you.